You are standing at the edge of a significant change. Everything is ready. The momentum is building. And then, without warning, it hits you. A sudden, paralyzing wave of self-doubt. It feels like a failure of will, or perhaps a sign that you should stop. Have you ever noticed how these thoughts never arrive when you are comfortable? They seem to wait for the exact moment you decide to move forward. It is as if a shadow is triggered by your own progress. We often treat this internal friction as a random emotional glitch, but there is a hidden pattern in the timing of these thoughts. This resistance is not an accident of your psychology. It is a precise mechanical response to the shift you are about to make. The doubt you feel isn't telling you to stop. It is revealing exactly how close you are to leaving your old self behind. We have all felt that sudden, heavy shift in momentum. One moment, you are inspired and certain of your direction. The next, a cloud of hesitation settles in, making your goals feel distant or even delusional. It usually happens just as you are about to take a definitive step. You might assume you've simply lost your nerve, or that your initial excitement was a mistake. But something strange happens in moments like these. If you look closely, you will notice that this doubt isn't random. It follows a specific rhythm. It tends to intensify the moment you stop merely thinking about change and actually begin to embody it. This pattern appears more often than we realize, yet most of us misinterpret the signal entirely. We mistake a transition for a stop sign. Why does the mind produce its loudest arguments for safety exactly when we are closest to a breakthrough? There is a mechanism at work here that most people overlook, and understanding it changes the way you see every obstacle in your path. Stay with me, because once you see this hidden trigger, the way you experience resistance will never be the same. Most of us categorize our lives into good days and bad luck. We see our moments of sudden confidence as a peak and our moments of doubt as a valley. But if you step back, a strange consistency begins to emerge. Have you ever noticed how the most intense resistance tends to arrive exactly when you've made a firm internal commitment to a new path? You decide to start the project, to leave the job, or to change your lifestyle, and suddenly the mental static becomes deafening. This is where the pattern becomes clear. It is a recurring cycle of expansion followed by an immediate defensive contraction. Many people see this friction as a sign that they are going the wrong way. They assume the universe is pushing back. But the repetition suggests something deeper. This pattern hides in plain sight, appearing every time you reach the boundary of your current comfort zone. We often misinterpret this as a warning to retreat, when it is actually a mechanical byproduct of your own progress. The resistance isn't blocking the path. The resistance is part of the path. And once you recognize this cycle, you begin to see that these worst times for doubt are actually the most predictable moments in the process of change. This is where the experience begins to make sense. To understand why doubt arrives at the worst time, we have to look at what is actually happening when you decide to change. You are not just changing your mind, you are shifting your entire state of being. The teaching here is that you exist as a specific frequency, and every belief you hold acts like a filter for that frequency. When you move toward a new goal, you are essentially attempting to tune in to a different version of yourself. But the old version, the one governed by your previous limitations, does not simply vanish. It produces a final, intense echo. We often mistake this echo for a warning or a lack of readiness. In reality, this is a mechanical vibrational friction. It is the sound of two different belief systems rubbing against each other as you transition from one to the other. This reveals something important about how reality works. The doubt is not a reflection of your ability. It is a biological and energetic response to the fact that you are successfully leaving an old frequency behind. This teaching is far simpler than most people expect. The presence of intense doubt is actually the proof that the shift is real. This is the hidden rule behind the experience.
Reality does not move in a continuous solid line. It functions more like a high-speed film reel composed of billions of individual static frames. When you change your beliefs, you are essentially reaching for a different reel entirely. This explains why the pattern behaves this way. Think of it like tuning a radio. To hear a new station, you must turn the dial away from the current one. In that brief moment between frequencies, you encounter a blast of white noise. That static isn't a sign that the radio is broken, it is the mechanical proof that you are successfully leaving the old station behind. In your life, self-doubt is that white noise. It is the friction that occurs when your consciousness is caught between two different versions of you. The old version is losing its grip, and the new version hasn't fully locked in yet. This mechanism has been operating in your life the entire time, even when you didn't have a name for it. Every time you felt that sudden, heavy resistance, you weren't failing, you were simply in the middle of the dial. Suddenly, the shift begins to make sense. The intensity of the doubt is not an obstacle to the transition, it is the sound of the transition itself. The mechanics of this shift are remarkably simple, yet we often find them impossible to follow. This is where many of us lose the signal. The moment the excitement of a new possibility appears, a secondary system kicks in.
It is the voice of your old identity, disguised as the voice of reason. It tells you to be practical. It warns you about the risks. It suggests that your sudden burst of clarity was just a momentary lapse in judgment. This is a powerful cognitive twist. Most people mistake this paralyzing caution for wisdom or maturity. We have been conditioned to believe that if something feels difficult or heavy, we are being responsible. We interpret our fear as logic. How many times has your own caution silenced a signal that felt absolutely right? This is the moment the inner voice begins to argue against your expansion, trying to pull you back into the frequency you've already outgrown. When we listen to that voice, the momentum vanishes, and the friction of the old reality returns. If you have ever felt this internal tug-of-war, I'm curious to hear when it usually shows up for you. Have you ever noticed yourself talking your way out of a breakthrough just as it was within reach? To move past the static of self-doubt, you don't need more willpower, you need a better navigation system. The formula for shifting your reality is surprisingly precise. First, look at the options available to you in this very moment. Identify the one that contains even a tiny spark of excitement or curiosity. Second, act on that excitement to the absolute best of your ability. It doesn't have to be a monumental leap. A small, simple step is enough to signal a change in frequency.
Third, follow that path only as far as it naturally goes, without forcing a result. This is where the navigation begins. Most importantly, you must release all attachment to what the final outcome should look like. This is how the signal becomes action without the interference of the old ego. By moving toward what excites you, even in small ways, you are effectively turning the dial to a new station. The formula works best when followed with a sense of light curiosity, rather than heavy pressure. This isn't about making something happen. It is about allowing yourself to be the person that the new reality already recognizes. If this perspective resonates with you, consider subscribing for more explorations into how consciousness and reality interact. The shift rarely starts with something dramatic. It usually begins in the quiet gaps of an ordinary day. Imagine you are sitting at your desk, feeling the heavy pull of a repetitive task. Suddenly, a small, unrelated spark of curiosity hits you. You feel a brief impulse to reach out to an old colleague or to spend 10 minutes researching a topic that has nothing to do with your current stress. This is often how the shift begins. Many of us dismiss these moments as distractions or mere coincidences. But in this scenario, you decide to follow the signal. You send the message without overthinking the outcome. An hour later, that person replies with an idea that perfectly solves the very problem you were struggling with earlier. The static of your morning doubt suddenly clears, replaced by a surge of natural momentum. How many times has a small decision like this changed the direction of your day? You may have already experienced similar moments without realizing their significance. These aren't just lucky breaks. They are the mechanical result of you choosing a different frequency through a simple, inspired action. The signal appears in these small, ordinary moments, waiting for you to recognize that the path forward is already calling to you. This changes the way we understand the experience of being alive. If self-doubt is a mechanical byproduct of shifting frequencies, then your identity is not a fixed destination. It is a choice you make in every moment. Suddenly, the pattern reveals a deeper meaning. It suggests that the version of your life that you desire is not something you have to build from scratch. It is a reality that already exists, vibrating at a different frequency. waiting for you to tune into it. We often view our lives as a single, unfolding story, but this perspective suggests something remarkable about the nature of experience. It implies that every spark of excitement is a literal bridge to a parallel version of yourself. When you feel that surge of doubt, you are not hitting a wall. You are standing at the threshold of a different world. Could these signals be guiding us toward the versions of ourselves we have not yet explored?
You may already be standing at the threshold of this realization in your own life, noticing that the person you used to be is no longer a match for the choices you are making now. The friction you feel is the proof that the transition is active. You are not just changing your mind, you are navigating the infinite architecture of what is possible. The next time you feel that sudden, sharp pull of self-doubt, remember that you are not experiencing a failure of character. You are experiencing a change in climate. The friction is simply the evidence that you are no longer where you used to be. Perhaps the signal of your expansion has been there all along, waiting for you to recognize its true name. Sometimes the shift begins simply by noticing that your hesitation is actually an invitation. As you move through your day, you may begin to see these patterns of resistance and flow appearing in places you once ignored. How often have these quiet signals been trying to guide you toward a version of yourself that is already real? Following this internal compass is a skill that deepens the more you trust it. If you're curious about the deeper mechanics behind how these signals shape the physical events of your life, the exploration appearing on your screen dives even further into that mystery.